The world held its breath. It was a Tuesday morning unlike any other. President Trump stood at a podium in the White House Rose Garden. Split screen, Trump at podium or chaotic trading floor. The sun was bright, but the mood was dark. He announced a decision that would send shockwaves across the globe. A flat 50% tariff on all imported goods. No exceptions, no negotiations. He called it the America First Fairness Act. He said it was necessary to protect American jobs, to bring manufacturing back to American shores. The president's words were firm, his tone unyielding. He promised a new era of American prosperity, built by American hands, for American families. This wasn't just a policy change, it was a declaration, a line drawn in the economic sand. The announcement was sudden. It caught allies and adversaries off guard. Financial markets, which thrive on predictability, were thrown into chaos. For years, the global economy had been built on a complex web of trade agreements. These agreements lowered barriers and encouraged the free flow of goods. Now, the world's largest economy was tearing up the rule book. The president argued the old system was unfair. He claimed other countries had taken advantage of the United States. He insisted this drastic measure was the only way to level the playing field. The message was simple and powerful. The era of global free trade was over. The reaction from America's northern neighbor was swift and sharp. In Ottawa, Canadian Prime Minister Justin Trudeau held an emergency press conference. His face was grim. He called the American tariff unacceptable, a betrayal. Canada, the United States. They share the longest undefended border in the world. Their economies are deeply intertwined. Billions of dollars in goods cross that border every single day. The tariff threatened to bring much of that trade to a grinding halt. Trudeau spoke directly to his people, promising to protect Canadian jobs and industries. He vowed that Canada would not be bullied. The sense of shock in Canada was mixed with a feeling of deep-seated anger. Half a world away in New Delhi, the mood was just as serious. India, a rising economic power, had been working for years to expand its trade relationship with the United States. The 50% tariff felt like a door slammed shut. Prime Minister Narendra Modi convened his cabinet for an urgent meeting. Textile manufacturers in Tamil Nadu, software giants in Bengaluru. The United States was one of their biggest markets. The tariff would make their products unaffordable for American buyers. A spokesperson for the Prime Minister's office released a statement calling the U.S. action a grave and unilateral measure that undermines the global trading system. The initial responses from both Canada and India were a mix of defiance and disbelief. They were not alone. European Union, Japan, South Korea, Mexico. The World Trade Organization warned of a deep and damaging global recession. But the reactions from Ottawa and New Delhi were different. They were more personal. On the surface, Canada and India seem like an odd couple. One is a vast, sparsely populated northern nation. The other is a densely packed, vibrant South Asian giant. They have different cultures, different histories, separated by thousands of miles. Yet, President Trump's tariff created a powerful common ground. Both nations are democracies, both are members of the Commonwealth, both suddenly found their economic futures held hostage by the same unilateral decision. The shared crisis created an opening for a partnership that few would have predicted. The old saying, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend," suddenly felt relevant. The first step was a phone call. Prime Minister Trudeau reached out to Prime Minister Modi. The conversation was direct and productive. They didn't waste time on pleasantries. They recognized they were in the same boat. Individually, their economies were much smaller than the United States. Retaliating alone would have limited effect, but what if they worked together? What if they combined their economic leverage? The idea of a Canada-India united front was born during that call. It was a bold, audacious plan, a direct challenge to America first. They would face this economic storm together. The logic was simple. Synergy. Canada is rich in natural resources, lumber, oil, minerals. India has a massive skilled workforce, manufacturing, information technology. Before the tariff, both focused heavily on the US market. Now they had to look elsewhere. The first major move by the new Canada-India alliance was the Strategic Economic Resilience Pact. It was a landmark agreement signed just weeks after the US tariff announcement. The pact immediately eliminated almost all tariffs between the two countries. A Canadian mining company could now sell potash to Indian farmers without extra costs. An Indian pharmaceutical company could sell generic medicines to Canada's healthcare system at a lower price. The goal was to redirect trade that would have gone to the US. It was a massive, real-time experiment in rerouting global supply chains. The pact also included joint investment provisions in green energy and artificial intelligence. They launched a coordinated diplomatic and legal offensive against the United States. Together, they filed a joint complaint with the World Trade Organization, arguing the U.S. tariff was illegal under international law. The lawsuit was symbolic, rallying other countries into a broad coalition. Canadian and Indian ambassadors at the United Nations lobbied other member states and drafted resolutions condemning the protectionist measures. They were isolating the isolator. The Global Supply Chain Initiative was a fund, jointly financed by Ottawa and New Delhi, designed to help businesses pivot away from the American market. If a Canadian auto parts manufacturer lost a contract with Ford, the fund would give low-interest loans to retool factories to sell to Indian carmakers like Tata Motors. If an Indian textile exporter lost a deal with Gap, the fund would help find buyers in Canada or in the European Union. It was a practical, hands-on approach to build resilience. Initially, the White House celebrated the tariff. They pointed to a few companies announcing plans to build new factories in the U.S., but the broader picture soon became much darker. The first and most immediate impact was on American consumers. The price of everything from groceries to electronics began to climb. Groceries, electronics. A 50% tax on imported goods was passed directly to the checkout counter. Inflation, which had been a concern before, started to spiral. Families found their paychecks weren't stretching as far. The promised prosperity was, for many, turning into a painful squeeze on their cost of living. U.S. businesses that relied on global supply chains were hit with a double whammy. First, the cost of the imported parts they needed to build their products went up by 50%. An American automaker, for example, suddenly had to pay much more for computer chips from Asia or transmissions from Canada. Computer chips from Asia, transmissions from Canada. This made their cars more expensive and less competitive. Second, the retaliatory measures from the Canada-India alliance and other nations that followed their lead meant that American export markets dried up. Canada-India alliance, other nations following a farmer in Iowa could no longer sell his corn to Canada. A tech company in Silicon Valley found its software blocked in India. The result was falling profits, factory slowdowns, and, inevitably, layoffs. Falling profits, factory slowdowns, layoffs. We visited Port Huron, Michigan, a city that sits right on the Canadian border. For generations, its economy has been powered by cross-border trade and manufacturing. For many, the economic theories and political maneuvers became a harsh reality overnight. We spoke with Sarah Jenkins, a third-generation farmer in Saskatchewan, Canada. Her family has been growing lentils for decades, with a majority of their crop exported to the U.S. It was like a switch was flipped, standing in front of a silo filled with unsold product. Our buyer of 30 years called the deal was off. The tariff made our lentils too expensive. I have a mortgage to pay, equipment to maintain. I was staring at ruin. But then, she says, something incredible happened. A new trade mission organized by the Canadian government connected her with a buyer in India. Now my lentils are heading to Mumbai. It's a different market, but it's a lifeline. In Jaipur, India, we met Rohan Mehra, who owns a small company making handcrafted furniture. For years, his biggest clients were boutique hotels in California, boutique hotels in Florida. When the tariff was announced, my heart sank. He showed us his workshop with artisans carving intricate designs. We lost 60% of our orders in 1 week. I thought I would have to let my workers go, people who have been with me for 20 years. As we stand here in late 2025, the global economic landscape looks profoundly different than it did just a year ago. The U.S. tariff gambit has not played out as the administration had hoped. Instead of forcing the world to bend to its will, it has sparked the creation of new alliances and accelerated a shift away from U.S. economic leadership. The Canada-India Pact stands as the most prominent example. It has proven surprisingly resilient and is now attracting interest from other nations. Australia, the UK, Japan. The world is reorganizing itself into new economic spheres of influence. What does the future hold? There are a few possible paths. One scenario is a prolonged and damaging trade war. The U.S. could double down on protectionist policies, leading to retaliation and a deeper global recession. Fractured supply chains, higher prices, increased political tension. It's a bleak outcome that would hurt everyone. The deep divisions and economic pain would make cooperation on issues like climate change and security nearly impossible. A second, more optimistic path involves gradual de-escalation. Economic pain inside the U.S. and pressure from businesses and consumers could force a policy reversal. A new U.S. administration or a change of heart from the current one might seek to rejoin the global trading system. The economic shockwave of 2025 has redrawn the lines of global power, and the world is still learning to navigate this new and uncertain terrain.